Great. Thank you, Gerhard. Good morning, and I'm really happy to be here to talk to you about Beyond Limits and just share some of my experiences being an entrepreneur. So I've been in the entrepreneurial business for the last 19 years working with Caltech. It started in 1998 when Caltech hired a new president, a gentleman by the name of Dr. David Baltimore. Dr. David Baltimore is a biologist, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Caltech, but Caltech is a physics school. So a lot of people at Caltech saying, well, why are we hiring a biologist to be the president of Caltech? And on top of that, Dr. Baltimore came from MIT. So there is a kind of a rivalry between MIT and Caltech. So the board of trustees at Caltech decided, you know what? Maybe a biology degree plus, and by the way, Dr. Baltimore won the Nobel Prize in biology. So the thinking was a biology degree plus a Nobel Prize equal a physics degree, we'll take him. But Dr. Baltimore did a phenomenal job. When he got to Caltech and JPL, he said he was very impressed with the level of and depth of technology at JPL and Caltech. So just for you in the audience who are not familiar, so Caltech is a very prestigious school. I'm happy to say they're ranked #1 again for the 5th time in a row as the #1 engineering school in the world. This is according to a Times Magazine survey. And so there is the school itself, and there is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is actually located in La Cañada. JPL is focused on the exploration of space and the planets. So they're part of the NASA community. NASA has 10 centers. There's Johnson, Kennedy, focus on basically supporting the manned space program, Space Shuttle, International Space Station. And then you have JPL, which again, they're focused on exploration of the space. And I wanted to share with you some of the experiences in terms of commercializing technologies that came out of the JPL side of the house. Just a little bit about my background. I have a master's degree in engineering. As a young kid, I remember watching Neil Armstrong walk on the surface of the moon. That had a profound effect on me. It just basically changed I wanted to be an engineer. I loved that. I mean, it was a great moment. Gerhard and I were talking about this earlier. He asked me, do we think I guess a lot of you, I don't know if you get the chance to see that movie. What's the name of I didn't get the chance to see it. About losing our astronaut on Mars. The Martian. Yeah, so I'm happy to say I think in our lifetime we will see a man walk on the surface of Mars. I mean, I think it's going to be a significant accomplishment and achievement. I think what I would like to do before I talk about Beyond Limits. So as Gerhard mentioned, Beyond Limits is a company was launched in 2012 as a startup spin-off company from Caltech. Since Caltech manages the Jet Propulsion Laboratory under the Bayh-Dole Act, any technology development at JPL, the IP will be owned by Caltech. So with that, I'd like to share with you a video, just kind of give you a context of some of the capabilities and the technologies we have at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. If we can, the name of the video is 7 Minutes of Terror, and it talks about landing the Curiosity on the surface of Mars. We're fortunate, and I feel honored we have a gentleman here who is actually on the advisory committee for that mission. Can we minimize this? And I'm an engineer, but I'm not a Mac guy. So, yeah, beautiful.
When people look at it, it looks crazy. That's a very natural thing. sometimes when we look at it, it looks crazy. It is the result of reasoned engineering thought, but it still looks crazy. From the top of the atmosphere down to the surface, it takes us 7 minutes. It takes 14 minutes or so for the signal from the spacecraft to make it to Earth. That's how far Mars is away from us. So when we first get word that we've touched the top of the atmosphere, the vehicle has been alive or dead on the surface for at least 7 minutes.
Entry, descent, and landing, also known as EDL, is referred to as the 7 minutes of terror, because we've got literally 7 minutes to get from the top of the atmosphere to the surface of Mars, going from 13,000 miles an hour to 0 in perfect sequence, perfect choreography, perfect timing, and the computer has to do it all by itself with no help from the ground. If any one thing doesn't work just right, it's game over.
We slam into the atmosphere and develop so much aerodynamic drag. Our heat shield, it heats up and it glows like the surface of the sun. 1,600 degrees.
During entry, the vehicle is not only slowing down violently through the atmosphere, but also we are guiding it like an airplane to be able to land in a very narrow, constrained space. This is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing, and one that we had never attempted on Mars.
Mars is actually really hard to slow down because it has just enough atmosphere that you have to deal with it. Otherwise, it will destroy your spacecraft. On the other hand, it doesn't have enough atmosphere to finish the job. We're still going about 1,000 miles an hour. So at that point, we use a parachute.
The parachute is the largest and strongest supersonic parachute that we've ever built to date. It has to be able to withstand 65,000 pounds of force, even though the parachute itself only weighs about 100 pounds.
When it opens up that fast, it's a neck-snapping 9 Gs.
At that point, we have to get that heat shield off. It's like a big lens cap blocking our view of the ground to the radar. The radar has to take just the right altitude and velocity measurements at just the right time, or the rest of the landing sequence won't work.
This big, huge parachute that we've got, it'll only slow us down to about 200 miles an hour. And that's not slow enough to land. So we have no choice, but we've got to cut it off and then come down in rockets. Once we turn those rocket motors on, if we don't do something, we're just going to smack right back into the parachute. So the first thing we do is make this really radical divert maneuver. We fly off to the side.
Diverting away from the parachute, killing our horizontal velocity and our vertical velocity, getting the rover moving straight up and down so it can look at the surface with its radar and see where we're going to land. And we head straight down to the bottom of a crater, right beside a 6-kilometer high mountain.
We can't get those rocket engines too close to the ground, because if we were to descend propulsively with our engines all the way to the ground, we would essentially create this massive dust cloud. That dust cloud could then go and land on the rover. It could damage mechanisms and it could damage instruments. So the way we solve that problem is by using the sky crane maneuver.
20 meters above the surface, we have to lower the rover below us on a tether that's 21 feet long, and then gently deposit it on its wheels on the surface.
As the rover touches down and is now on the ground, the descent stage is in a collision course with the rover. We must cut the bridle immediately and fly the descent stage to a safe distance from the rover.
This is a tough problem, very complex problem. So the whole idea, I mean, going from 13,000 miles an hour to basically land a spacecraft very gently because we do not want the Martian dust to affect the instrumentation. We can't have them also cover the solar panels so we can lose energy. Very complicated problem, required a lot of reasoned engineering. So with that, I'd like to talk to you about our company. Next slide. Again, we're a spin-off from Caltech, and I apologize for the propaganda, bear with me. Most of the technology is coming out of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and they're a world leader in space exploration. So Curiosity is one example, and we basically have sent many robotic missions to Mars. Next slide, please. So what is the opportunity? This was presented to, this is our overview deck, is we have a huge opportunity in what it's being called the artificial intelligence market has been called the fourth industrial revolution. And it's going to have an impact on everything we do. This is an opportunity that is in the trillions. It's a huge, significant opportunity. When Susan asked me to give the presentation, she asked me also to talk about some of the lessons learned from my past experience as an entrepreneur. The reason I want to emphasize the market size, because this is really important. In one of the projects we've launched from Caltech, it's actually a very dear project to me. We invented a capability called tunable diode laser to basically detect water vapor on the surface of Mars. The mission was, so there is a general consensus in the scientific community. If you basically find water, that's the definition of life. So we basically use the tunable diode laser to detect water vapor on the surface of Mars. Typically what NASA does is they look in the commercial industry to see if any capabilities exist. If they do exist, they will basically acquire that. But Mars is a very harsh environment. They couldn't find anything out there, so they decided to invest in those capabilities. So we've developed the tunable diode laser. They work perfectly on the surface of Mars. The government spent about $80 million developing one laser and a spare. So now we needed to basically commercialize that to take it to the private sector. And what we did is we were market-driven. We basically said, let's see if we can identify a pain in the market. And there was a big pain in the market. It was in the natural gas industry. So the biggest contaminant in natural gas is water vapor. Same problem we're trying to solve on Mars. It's a very harsh environment. The problem for the big utility companies, they were using existing technology that gave them about 25% zero tolerance. What that meant is 25% of the time they actually had to shut down the pipeline and discovered it was a negative false alarm. That cost them millions of dollars. So with the tunable diode laser technology that basically was invented at JPL, we were able to reduce that from 25% to less than 2%, significant advantage. So here we identified a pain in the market. We were able to solve that pain. We went from a 0 to $40 million in revenue in about 2 years. We became the de facto player. So great example, but one problem. The market was small. The total market size was about $100 million. So had I had to do this again, I would basically have looked at other markets. I mean, right now, if you're trying as an entrepreneur, if you're trying to get any company funded, they're going to look at the market size. Anything that it doesn't have a B in front of it, it's just not going to get funded in Silicon Valley. You may be able to get some angel investors. So it was a valuable lesson. I mean, it pains me to say this was a mistake. I love the project. It was a successful project. But unfortunately, we focused on a very small market. I'm happy to say artificial intelligence is a huge market. It's not in the B's, in the T's. So what is our technology advantage? So as I mentioned, and Gerhard mentioned in the introduction, we basically want to be the leader in artificial general intelligence. Artificial intelligence has been around for a long, long time. So back in the 70s, we basically thought, you know what, AI is going to resolve all our problems. We're going to have these robots basically just take care of us. We don't have to do anything. Everything is going to be done by robots. Well, guess what? We were wrong, you know. Actually, AI played a role. It played a role if you had a very specific domain problem. So if you knew the rules, AI worked beautifully. But it just, there was a lot of shortcomings in the technology to basically say it can think as a human being. It can have that cognitive computing capability. That did not exist in the 70s. And it kind of tarnished the AI capability. Right now, we're going through a renaissance. We think we can basically evolve the AI in a specific area called artificial general intelligence, trying to make machines think like a human being. What we're leveraging is an investment from the federal government in the Mars program of over $150 million. So we actually were not starting from a blank piece of paper. So our R&D risk is reduced because there is a significant investment from the government. We still have to do the business risk. One of the questions was, how do you deal with the classified information you have so that you can benefit from the development but not jeopardize the confidentiality? Great question. So although JPL is mainly a NASA facility, 20% of their work is related to DoD and the classified community. Who asked this question, by the way? I'm just curious. Great question. So 80% is NASA related, 20% is DoD and classified community. What Caltech did, they did something very smart. They basically convinced DoD, DARPA, and the classified community, let's build a technology platform outside of the classified wall, okay? But focus on the knowledge bases and the specific databases that will be done in the classified arena. And they have done a phenomenal job. This way, they were able to leverage that to the rest of the space program, and we were able to basically commercialize those capabilities. So a lot of the capabilities we have are basically developed outside that platform, and they keep the databases and the knowledge bases specific to the classified program. But great question. Next slide, please. So our theme is we're beyond AI. We're the next generation AI. So you're going to hear terms like human-like reasoning, artificial general intelligence. So now we can basically start looking at how a human being thinks and trying to basically emulate that. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to get into AI, but just a quick thing. So mainly traditional AI systems is what we call deductive reasoning. And I think most of you come from a business background. This is what we call the what-if rule, business rules, okay? If A equals B and B equals C, or A implies B and B implies C, then A implies C. Very simple. Most of traditional AI systems basically think that way. A human being, as humans, we think more not just in a deductive way, but we also think inductive reasoning and abductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning, when there is two areas, they're not directly correlated, but there's some relationship, then the human being or the human brain can inference a correlation and make that. On the abductive side is you have two potential scenarios. At the surface, they don't look, they are related at all. But if you dig deep, then you're going to basically find some correlation. That's we are the superior entities on this planet. Machines cannot think that way, and that was the limitation of traditional AI system. With artificial general intelligence, we're trying to solve that problem. We're trying to move from deductive to inductive, assumptive, and abductive reasoning. Next slide, please. Again, I just wanted to go after the market. This is from Google, so there was an article in the San Jose Mercury News talked about the AI arms race. And what they were talking about is the big guys like Google, Microsoft, were just acquiring AI companies. One specific example is Google bought a company in the UK called DeepMind. They paid $685 million for DeepMind. DeepMind did not have a single product. They had 0 revenue, startup company. Yet Google paid $685 million for them. They bought the expertise, the knowledge. So a lot of the big guys are basically acquiring AI companies. We see IBM basically, IBM and Google also paid $3.2 billion for Nest. So we see a lot of acquisition frenzy in that area. I mean, I'm encouraging my kids, and unfortunately, I lost that argument, you know. Get an AI degree. I mean, at JPL right now, without, you know, they're paying about $175,000 for somebody who's graduated from college. I mean, Google, Microsoft, and Yahoo, they're going to schools like Stanford, MIT, Berkeley, Caltech. They're hiring the entire class before they graduate. Get your kids to be an AI engineer, you know. It just, you know, it's a great environment. But one of the big applications in AI is this thing that we call Internet of Things. Are you guys familiar with that? So it's there's so many definitions for IoT, but mainly it talks about the growing number of devices out there with an IP address that can connect to the internet. So now we have hundreds of millions of devices connected, and that number soon to grow significantly. So that's, according to a recent study, that market is going to be a $14.4 trillion by 2022. This is all going to require an AI and AGI back-end infrastructure. Next slide, please. Please, if you have any questions or comments, just feel free to ask. This is a very informal talk. One more, if you can just. So I mentioned IoT because now it's the new trend and the new buzzword. My friend here can attest to the fact, well, IoT was around for a long time. We have, I know you were an advisor on the Mars mission, but were you involved with the Voyager? Wow. Awesome. So Voyager, we launched Voyager in the 70s. We actually launched 2 spacecrafts because back then that was our redundancy system. We thought if we lose one, there is another one. Voyager was designed to basically study Jupiter. Voyager last year left our solar system. It's the only and first man-made object to leave the solar system. It's about 1 billion miles away. So you want to talk about the Internet of Things? We've done Internet of Things at JPL. Still once in a while, it will still send some data. Next slide, please. So what is the challenge? I think there was another question about AI and you know, I mean, if you think about this, until the 1900s, knowledge basically doubled every century. And by the end of World War II, it was by every 25 years. 2013, it was every 13 months. We're soon going to basically double that every 12 hours. Just think about that. I have a daughter who is a pre-med student. She's going to medical school. It's going to take her 10 years to graduate. I haven't shared this with her, but I'm going to tell her, hon, after 10 years, guess what? Every 13 hours, knowledge is going to change. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, no humans cannot catch up with that overwhelming data and information. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to touch base on some of the applications where we as a company are focused on. So next generation search, for the younger generation, for us, Google was a cool thing. You did a keyword search and you basically got about 1,000 pages. The more pages, I was like, wow, that was impressive. With the younger generation, that's like, what are you talking about? Okay, I just want my answer. Don't give me 1,000 pages, So the whole concept of especially right now in the world is going mobile, with mobile devices. I'm not gonna sit and just look at, tens of thousands of links. I need the system to understand my intent. I need the system to understand what I'm looking for, okay? I mean, my wife hates to use navigation on her mobile device. It just doesn't want to bother with that, You gotta have a very efficient system that can understand the intent and basically can give you the specific answer you need. You need AI for that. Intelligent assistants, autonomous intelligent assistants, I mean, a lot of you basically have iPhones and Android devices, so you have Siri, you have Google Voice, Microsoft has Cortana, Amazon came up with Alexa. So there are a lot of digital assistants. But unfortunately, they're still in the deductive reasoning part. I don't know if you tried it, but ask Siri a question. I mean, this is a good test. Ask Siri if you have your iPhone, who is the president of the United States? It's going to give you the right answer. It's going to tell you Barack Obama. Then ask the question, how old is he? Okay? It's going to come back and say 238 years old. Because it's think you're asking about the United States, not the president of the United States. Cannot, it's very, so this is where this the deductive reasoning is falling apart. So we really need that next generation AGI to basically help solve these problems. Cognitive analytics in healthcare. Right now, our medical system, 3% of the top patients are consuming 80% of the total cost. Think about it. 3% are consuming 80% of the cost. If we are going to have a handle on our healthcare system, we need to figure out a different way of handling the system. So right now, payers, United, Anthem, they're trying to say, okay, can we get to that 3% and see if we can basically maybe modify behaviors? You can have potentially a kid with pre-diabetes, let's say at age 15. This kid can live for 50 or 60 years. So that kid is going to be in the healthcare system for 50 to 60 years. And guess what? According to United, the monthly life cycle cost, this is not actual cost, this is life cycle cost, is about $16,000 a month. So $16,000 a month for one patient that you are, hate to say this, stuck with for 60 years, okay, is a costly option. You have to, I think they're looking at basically hospitalization, what diabetes, indirect other illnesses that my diabetes costs. So it's not just the actual cost, but the entire ecosystem affected by basically supporting that patient in different ways. It's a huge number. It's a significant number. So now the question for United Healthcare, if I can go to that patient or that kid and give him an incentive to maybe change his behavior, make sure he takes his medication on time. We all know kids are not just gonna follow that, but also maybe introduce a gamification element. I mean, United has basically run a couple of test pilots where they're actually giving a tablet to patients. Use it, follow the diet, look at your situation, make sure you adhere to medication. And by the way, if you want Netflix subscription, HBO subscription, if you want to download games, we'll pay for it. So a lot of these payers in the system are basically right now going that route. But to identify those patients and to identify these trends, you need artificial intelligence to basically handle that. This is, I think, I mean, I'm actually, I feel positive because I see so many startups in the healthcare business that we eventually gonna get, basically gonna get that system under control. We need to, or it's gonna basically bankrupt the country. Content AI, so on the radio, I basically heard that Toyota has decided to basically cancel the Scion brand because now they feel that millennials, you know, they designed that brand for people who did not want to go to the dealership, but now the next new generation is, you know, unlike the millennials, okay, want to go to dealership and look at cars. So we seem to basically be marketing for that, you know, 18 to 28 age group. And personalization to get them the right content at the right time in terms of what's their interest is going to be very important. To just throw a lot of spaghetti at the wall is just not going to make it. You're going to basically see AI play a big and a significant role there. We've talked about smart IoT. I think a lot of you, I'm sure you've been hearing about the autonomous cars. Autonomous cars is going to happen. We do have the technology today to make it happen and to support it. The problem is we just need to get our ecosystem, the infrastructure, and the regulation to basically keep up with that. But there are some tough decisions. I mean, if we're going to have autonomous cars, you need to have that ecosystem. The roads need to communicate with the cars. You need to basically start giving decisions now. If I have a car, you know, an autonomous car that I know for a fact, okay, it's either going to run into a wall, okay, what do I do? What about the choice of, you know, maybe this is an easy choice. If that car is going to either hit a bus with 20 kids or an old man, what choice you need to make? Those are the kind of decisions that are not technology related that we need to basically take care of and tackle to basically have that system. But it will happen, and we are getting there. And companies like Intel are just basically chopping the bit to build, you know, they see a significant opportunity to sell a lot of CPUs, a lot of chips, a lot of systems to support that system. Next slide, please. Just talks about the market. Let's skip that. So this is just some of the capabilities, the differentiator for our AGI system in processing. When you send a spacecraft, when we send that Curiosity you saw, it's the size of 2 chairs here. You have lots of scientific instruments on that spacecraft. Guess what? The computing power on board that is very limited. So we were asked to push the computing power in algorithms. Okay, so a lot of our focus was on not utilizing traditional computing power, but basically using artificial intelligence algorithms to basically solve problems and capability. It's very lightweight. Okay, it can be embedded or it can be used in the cloud. It's autonomous, and it can actually move from an inductive to deductive and abductive reasoning. Next slide, please. So the technology and the applications are great. The market is huge. The opportunity is tremendous. But let's make no mistake about it. There are some barriers. There are basically some ethical and legal questions. Smart people like Stephen Hawking, one of the best physicists in our time, and basically think that our human race is doomed because of AI. When a smart guy like that, I mean, that's something to take into consideration. When Bill Gates, Elon Musk, they said we have to be careful about super intelligence. These are smart, powerful guys. So we do have that ethical and legal question. Plus also when you have iRobot and you have Skynet, those movies, that doesn't really help the cause. But I can assure you, you can go to bed tonight, don't worry about robots chasing you. We're far from that. We're not even close. There is also the question about security. We're gonna have a lot of information out there. We need to make sure that information is secured. If you basically have a peacemaker, we wanna make sure that nobody can hack into that. That can basically kill a person. If you are in an autonomous car, we wanna make sure that is not going to be hacked. So there are some security issues, but we do have some great, tremendous encryption capabilities and technologies that can basically solve that problem. And from a society, I can tell you that we are gonna speed up. There's going to be significant changes. And unfortunately, that's going to basically create a knowledge gap, and in societies, and the result is going to be fewer economic opportunities for the underprivileged. It's the fact of life. By 2025, worldwide, we're going to basically, by automation alone, we're going to reduce the labor cost by 16%. Translation, folks. We're going to lose that's going to mean reduction 22% in the US alone. I would argue we're going to create jobs based on AI. We need AI if we're going to compete globally. But there are those issues that we need to tackle beyond just technology.